All right, so I want to talk about this whole racist thing. So if you don't know, and this is sad, like usually sometimes goth drama can be fun, but this is not a fun thing. Reese, who was a friend of mine on Facebook and who has shared the podcast, talked about on his page, really enjoying the show, and said some really nice things about it. Posted a meme on the Goth memes page that I will show you here. So, people you may know and friend requests. So, the joke of the meme is that there are some bots out there who are oftentimes Middle Eastern, Arabic, a lot of times Indian, and you get friend requests from these people, and a lot of times they'll harass women, but those are usually Indian men from what I've seen. So the people you may know are actual goths, but you get friend requests from people like that. And Joe Atack rightly commented and mentioned that he said it was a racist joke. The irony of the people or friend requests is that a lot of the time it's the fake accounts are women, white women, either taken from porn actress accounts or stock photos or whatever. So what we have is a white goth and then a Arabic Middle Eastern person. I'm not sure, that's just my ignorance. So Joe comments on it and mentions that this is a racist joke. They say, oh, it's not racist. There's nothing racist about it. He's like, goths aren't just white, and there are goths of different nationalities. And they never really, they kind of just harass him, or they kind of just say, explain why this is racist, explain why this is racist. So when I first saw that, my thought was like, well, okay, so we've got, I understand the intent of the joke. I don't think this person is racist. However, the photo in the context of everything that's going on, especially now that we're talking more about how every time we see a photo of a true goth or a idealized goth, it's always a white guy. And within broader cultural norms, there's still a lot of racism going on. That it's in poor taste. It's not, the intent isn't to be racist, but it can be perceived that way. So that was my first thought. But then Reese goes and posts about being called racist on his page, jokes about it, as in, can you believe these people would call me racist? Someone would blow this out of proportion. And then he starts getting comments that he is heart reacting to. And I'll read a couple of these. I've been accused of racism a few times. These are other people. I've been accused of racism a few times by oversensitive, progressive pansies who get their far-left, ideologically retarded panties in a twist over fuck all. If the classic Pavlovian response, or it's the classic Pavlovian response. I wonder what it's like up there in their ivory tower. Do they get altitude sickness from being so high and lofty? Here's someone else. When are people going to get a life and a sense of humor? It's just a meme. It's just a meme, right? It's just media. It's just the way that our culture understands and interacts with each other. Like, it's not a big deal, right? I fucking hate that. Oh, it's just a movie. Oh, it's just a song. These are the ways that we learn stereotypes and that we start to treat certain groups certain ways. If they can't deal with things like that, then they probably shouldn't be on social media in the first place. Let's see if there's any other. So there's some more conversation that goes on. It's still public on his page. You could go look at it. Someone says, eat a dick snowflake, which he thinks is funny. Someone else says Tobin needs a fat dick up his ass, might relieve some of the tension, which he thinks is funny. He really thinks that one's funny, apparently. And at this point, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. First of all, the first comment there is someone talking about echo chambers, when what we have here is an echo chamber. He knew, rather than engaging with what the issue might be, he goes off to post about it where his friends will back him up and they can laugh about it and say really shitty things to someone, rather than considering, or having any kind of conversation about it. And it just becomes tribalism, and the tribalism there specifically has to do with politics, which is, I mentioned in Discord, one of the reasons I argued for Goth being apolitical is because when we start trying to talk about these issues, like the portrayal of Goths as of the best Goths being white men, that people jump into their political tribal groupings and start throwing names at each other rather than engaging with the conversation. And I think that's harmful. Now, to Ziggy's point, she mentions that these things can be political, which I agree with. I didn't mean to say they can't be. There are very certain situations in which they are, but I think politicizing them within a Goth dialectical context can be detrimental. So this goes on, and I at one point leave a comment because I felt like, I was talking with a friend of mine who is a person of color, and they mentioned, they brought up this thing that it always ends up being up to the people of color to call out racism, and white men never really speak up. And so I felt like I needed to say something. And I thought maybe he would listen to me. We've had good conversations, or we've talked before at least. And he knows me. And, the problem is he got called out for something. He very likely internalized it and assumed Joe was saying he was racist rather than what he made was racist, or at least could be perceived as racist, and immediately became defensive, because that's what we do a lot of times. I've been called out before. The most recent thing was I posted a meme I made about a bat and said something about bats being spirit animals, Goth spirit animals, and someone commented and said that was I should remove it because that was cultural appropriation. Pretty similar kind of comment to Joe, curt, to the point, not differentiating between the meme and the person. And my initial reaction was to say, fuck off. Like, this, I didn't mean it that way. It's a common pop culture term. Like, it's not a big deal. Who cares? And I had to stop myself and think, you know what? I'm making an argument, immediately defending myself without actually having considering the other person's point of view. Like, maybe I am wrong, and it's my responsibility, not their responsibility. It's my responsibility to then go seek out some information and try to figure out where the truth lies. And I did. I went and read I did a bunch of research. I read a bunch of articles. I looked at some of the common defenses and realized, like, yeah, I think I actually am in the wrong, and I should change it. And so I did, and I apologized, and that opened up a different conversation. But people don't, and I think especially when you're a white guy, you have an extra responsibility to do that kind of thing, because we get away with not doing that, especially if you have a Goth memes page with 154,000 likes or whatever. Like, you get called out and it's not really going to affect you, and you've already won the life lottery, right? So we have to hold ourselves accountable, because we just still get away with all kinds of shit. So I left a comment I said it's unfortunate that rather than thoughtfully engaging with the criticism, you've decided to become defensive and double down. Often those of us in a place of privilege create content that, while unintentional, ends up perpetuating stereotypes and racial coding in ways we didn't expect because of our blind spots. Like, for example, um, I used to think the idea that a while ago, changing superheroes or known characters from a white person to a person of color was wrong because you were somehow um, doing a disservice to the character. But in reality, again, movies and media and music, this is what creates our culture. And when you only have a specific type of person represented in the vast majority of media that everyone consumes, it becomes very, very easy to marginalize and perpetuate bigoted behavior towards people don't that you aren't exposed to. Um, and to It's the same. You see it happen with any kind of marginalized group, that you dehumanize them because you aren't exposed to them, and this type of thing plays right into that. Um, there's tons of research that shows children grow up to be less bigoted, less racist, less sexist if they are exposed to and have friend groups and communities that are multicultural. But even then, if the broader cultural um, zeitgeist is white guys, then you're going to favor that because that's what you're comfortable with, and that's why we have to break that kind of thing. So we have, again, a white person, and then the person of color is being made fun of, and the white person is the hero of the story. Like, it is a problem, whether you intended it to be or not. So I said, these moments are not when we retreat to our own groups and heart react to what has frankly been pretty hateful comments, but to step back from our impulse to defend ourselves and consider in what ways we may have done damage. It's not easy, and I've had to do it, but as a white man, I have to take this stuff seriously when it comes to marginalized groups, because often those groups are too afraid to say anything. Let's be part of a solution, not part of a system that alienates people of color. Whether intended or not, when you say something, it is not said in a vacuum. It exists within a broader cultural context, and those hegemonic systematic stereotypes filter into goth and everything else, harming people of color in ways that aren't explicit, but can be reinforced and re-traumatizing for people who have lived their whole lives being exploited and marginalized by others in and out of the culture. All right, so that's what I said. And my thought was like, maybe we can talk about it then. Maybe, he asked Joe, rather than saying anything about it or at all, he just kept saying to Joe, why is this racist? Why is this racist? So I thought maybe he'll ask that question, or he'll say something in response that I can start a conversation. And he said, I have not decided to be defensive, as I have nothing to defend myself over. The fact that you have chosen to view this meme through eyes which only see race says more about you than I. By the way, I'm from a multiracial family, so please do not lecture me upon issues of racism or stereotyping, or when it comes to acceptance within the goth community. Thank you for your comment. And then at some point, he said something about self-righteous white people. He said something about, oh, you can't assume the goth person's racial background. So all of these, he shut down the conversation. He didn't want to have it. Essentially, he's saying, you can't say anything to me because you're white, and then use some other, and I wouldn't listen even if you did, because I have nothing to apologize for, and there's no reason for me to even consider that I might have done something wrong. And then some other classic bigoted stereotypes type of rationalization for this kind of thing. And I understand, like, I agree in certain situations, uh, white people shouldn't be sort of trying to dictate how other people should think or feel or tell them what's right or wrong, which wasn't what I was trying to do anyway. But for the sake of goth culture and the uh, discursive nature of it, and the relevance of this kind of thing, shutting down that conversation and saying that you don't have any place to say anything is just asinine. I was honestly shocked. I did not expect that type of response. And then, he went on to heart and laugh react to other comments saying equally hateful things to what had been said. So this was really disappointing. This was really disappointing, and especially considering that I think we've been making progress within goth culture when it comes to diversity and just being inclusive and valuing and recognizing people for their qualities as a goth, and moving away from some of the problems we've had with valuing white people. And this was just kind of it was really disappointing. And this person also knows Joe and has talked to Joe before and has seen some of his work. And Joe isn't someone who, it's like, engage in the discussion with good faith. This is one of those situations where that did not happen, and it was really disappointing because he knows Joe doesn't go around making unfounded accusations, and he's not somebody that won't have a conversation with you about stuff, that even if he's stated a position, he's willing to change his mind, as am I. And it's this type of thing, especially when it comes to these issues, that we have to engage in good faith and be charitable and have these discussions, which is what I tried to do. And so the whole thing was just incredibly discouraging. And I'm certain nothing's going to come of it. I mean, I've unliked the page. I won't share their memes anymore. I unfortunately had to unfriend Reese, which, like, I appreciate that he shared my show before, but I can't support that type of behavior. For me, the last straw was the way he responded to my comment. The second to last straw was his, being supportive of the sort of hateful comments from other people. So this isn't meant to be a video like bashing him, but just to bring up that this kind of thing is happening, and to be brave and stand up for what you think is right. And on both sides, to avoid tribalizing, to avoid going to a left or right or wherever it is position and staying there and standing there and not having the conversation. They were accusing leftists of being, there were some other comments about the regressive left and whatever. I didn't want to read through all of it. It's pretty gross. But whatever position it's coming from, there still should be a conversation. And if both sides can come to it with the desire to look at their own views and opinions and consider their actions and consider the arguments of someone else, that's the important thing. And if you can't do that, then I can't do anything for you. And I don't think you should really have a voice in the conversation, because Goth isn't a place for toxic internet comments. It's really not. I mean, despite what you see in the groups, I think a lot of those people aren't really Goths, or aren't Goth for very long, or are people who have been like kicked out of local scenes, and so they just go online to be shitty. So this was disappointing, and this is something obviously I mentioned in the video for next year, that I want to engage with these ideas of racism and of treatment of people that aren't white within the scene as an episode. I'm still trying to schedule that. We've had a few people that haven't responded or whatever, and I'm working on some other episodes, getting those nailed down, because that one's a few months from now. But I think next week is when I'm going to be reaching out to people again to try and make sure I can get that set up. But yeah, so I would like to hear your thoughts. Maybe, do you think I'm wrong? Do you think what I've said is incorrect? Leave a comment and put it in Discord. We had an interesting discussion on Discord for those of you that were in there. So that's it. I've got another video coming in a couple days, and hopefully I'll be making more content after that. I've been reading a book I must be downstairs, that I want to do a review of, and hopefully some other fun things. So thanks for listening, and until next time, stay dark.